Okay, so this here video, I really feel like has a lot to do with it's an extension of why I believe the things that are happening have happened thus far. I really believe that the reason why we've had a lot of, trouble in America with different minority groups, different people, in general, is because a lot of it is fueled by big governments, and there's a purpose for it. And you have to have people who are divided so that you can have talking points and you can build an audience or a platform so you can get people to rally around you and vote for you. And so, how race and identity became the central dividing line in American politics. So, this is by Lee Drutman. And this was in 2016. So, it wasn't really that long ago, I don't believe. I see here it has August 30, but you see, this was back when, you had Clinton who was running. It was the 2016 race, and race played a big, you notice race played a huge, major part. I really think it always does, but even more so, it was magnified in 2016 race for election. So race and identity has emerged as a central dividing line in American politics. Though race has always lived close to the surface of politics in the US, which I believe it's always been there. It's just now it's more pronounced where people are more emboldened. Some people are against seeing people wearing the Make America Great Again hats. You see people are really offended when they see those hats, or they're offended by people saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing or approaching people a certain way. It's more of, about race. You notice that? Even more so now, it seems like it's more pronounced. And so, how did this happen? The easy answer is Donald J. Trump. True, Trump was the first modern Republican to win the nomination based on racial prejudice. So, and yes, racial resentment does more to explain the support for Trump than even ideology. And so you have to say the things, you have to say all of the talking points, and you have to bring out all of the issues, but do it in a way where it enforces and brings out all those hot button topics, and it enforces law along with it. What your law would be, okay, this is the law. You have to add in there your justification why you're doing this, even though a lot of people see it as being really racial. So you have to use, now they really stoop to a new low to use biblical scriptures to justify what they're doing. So people can see now what right through this. Some people can see right through it. Some people are confused. They don't Trump, but Trump is not acting in a vacuum. Go. He's not the only president that has come out based on race, that has been elected based on race issues. So his identity based on nomination should be seen as a logical culmination of Republicans' 50 years Southern strategy. If you know anything about that, you can read on it. But to make politics primarily about race and identity instead of economics, which we do hear about economics, but a lot of that somehow race is involved in it. And so this history is not just an academic exercise, it's crucial for understanding where politics is headed. And so, doesn't it seem, and I'm just going to add this in here, doesn't it seem like everything that's happening now is more about the wealthy versus the poor? It's starting to shift, sort of. We still have the race debates and the issues and a lot of things like, um, police brutality in the Black community and in Latin communities. And then you also have the mass incarceration issues, LGBT issues. Then you have, transgender, which is a part of you. And then you have also the issues with, women issues, the Me Too movement. And you have all these issues that have to do with these hot button topics: abortion, pro abortion, against abortion, for or against whatever in those arenas. And then you have now these things involving children. Suicide is coming into play because of the horrible things that have been happening have just really caused people to go into, some people can't handle it. They go into depression. So it says that treating Trump's nomination as a historical aberration allows one to think that there is some returning to normal. Viewing Trump's nomination as a historical culmination suggests instead that there is no going back, and that is normal is just the name we call a bygone era, a bygone area. So, excuse me if I have like sort of like a way of talking, or I don't know, maybe some people think I might have an accent. So, for Republicans, the irony is that this strategy reached its full complexion at precisely the moment when it was no longer a winning national strategy. So, for Democrats, notice we got the Republicans, the Democrats, and then we have the red states and the blue states. It's like playing like a game, but you're playing a game on words. You know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, who to say it to. You're also playing a game on, well, it's not really, it's a game, but not like ha ha funny. It's more like, okay, how can we build this audience? How can we take these voters? How can you notice how, like, when politicians, they'll go, like, for a good example, like when you had politicians go in the Black community, they go, the first place they go a lot of times is to a place they feel a lot of Black people will be, is a place of worship, like a church. And it'll be like a Southern Baptist church, or it'll be a First AME church. And they'll try to do, like an announcement, or they'll try to, come and visit, or they'll go out to somewhere where they think that your culture is most centered around. And it's the same thing like when they visit the Latin communities or the Hispanic communities. And excuse me, I don't want to offend anyone, because I know some people say there's no such thing as Latin, there's no such thing, but just as a general key here, to use it to identify with people in the Latin or Central America and Spanish speaking countries, that they'll go to different things, like events that you hold that are cultural, to try to gain voters. And now what they're doing now, because of the school shootings, is they're trying to, they're trying to now get young people to vote. And their talking points are, oh, I'm going to help, try to, be tough on crime and be tough on, security, more security, and more, enforcement of no guns. And so they have to keep people kind of, riled up. And so for Republicans, the irony is that the strategy reached its full complexion at precisely the moment when it was no longer a winning national strategy. So for Democrats, with their coalition increasing, split along class lines, this is looking more and more like one issue that can keep the party coalition together. So no wonder then that this is the issue. And so when Hillary was running, Hillary Clinton is now hitting Trump's hardest. Okay, so they kind of were like, you notice how when they both were going at it back and forth, it was like back and forth, back and forth. It was like, okay, let's talk about women's rights. Let's talk about, they dig up everything bad on Hillary. They dig up everything. Well, it doesn't take that long to dig up stuff on Trump. I just have to be honest. But While the Democrats do appear to be benefiting in the election, at the presidential level, it's not clear yet that this is truly a long-term winning issue for the Democrats. Now, this is in 2016. This is before they actually elected Trump. But much of it depends on Republican shift in response in 2016. So whether Democrats overreach, but to understanding what might come next. So politics is a battle. I'm just going to jump here. Politics is a battle over dividing lines of conflict. So they need to have people constantly at each other for different issues, because it builds the momentum for the next election, even if it means tragedy ensues. And I know that sounds pretty sick, but that's the way this whole thing has been going. So, in order to make clear the sense of political history of how we got to now, is basically theoretical framework will go a long ways. So, the theoretical framework comes in political sciences. E. Schatz Schneider, 1960 classic Semi-Sovereign People, a realist view of democracy in America. So what happens in politics? Schatz Schneider writes, depends on the way in which people are divided in factions, parties, groups, classes, etc. So the outcome of the game of politics depends on which of the multitude of possible conflicts gains the dominant position. So that is more important. You got to get people riled up on all these hot button topics. And this is going to be a doozy the next election, because it's like a big deal. Now you got people who probably never even thought about the conflicts that are happening now within the politics this deep, because it affects people personally now, to where you're doing a play on their race, who they are, what they believe in. You're throwing religion in there, the skin color, all these real heated discussions. And so this just makes for more, drama in the whole politics of it all. So it involves many issues across multiple dimensions. The two-party system, like one we have in America, there are really only be like one primary dividing conflict at any given time, since there are only two parties. So you have the Democrats and the Republicans, the red states, the blue states. So you can think of it as two teams, right? It's like one team is against the other team. And you know how people get, just like if you imagine like football games or basketball games, how people get really emotional over whose team won, whose team lost, and how people feel when you call them a loser. And so it's sort of that same thing. It's like now you're calling people names by, racial slurs, talking about people's sexuality, talking about people's gender, how you feel women should be treated or shouldn't be treated. And then you get people riled up, how kids should be treated, whose kids are more important. Is it the white kids that are more important, or the minority kids, or all kids? No, it's, oh, these kids are more important because we're losing. We're not having as many of these kids, but we have all these kids who are minorities. You see what I'm saying? I'm trying to get the point out here that it's a play on people's emotions, which is horrible, but this is kind of intertwined with the whole thing of politics. And so you can think of it as the two teams forming around a basic divide. And so then subverting whatever other internal disagreements, just like I said, your race, your sexuality, or, whether you're straight, gay, whatever, whether you're a male or female, and all of those disagreements internally over many things. But in a political system organized around, example, Yankees versus the Red Sox, they would be in a different parties and put other disagreements aside. So Schatz Schneider fundamental insight was that the fight over this primary dividing line is the most important fight in the politics of all politics. That's because this fight that determines which party is the majority and which party is the minority. You see what I'm saying? So, and which issues get argued about between parties and which issues get argued about within the parties. So however Because public opinion does not exist on a single dimension, any alignment contains within many disagreements which tend to grow over time. So, over an example, for example, Red Sox fans may be united over their hatred of Yankees. Get it? So, white people are kind of united because of racial resentment, because of their issues like, oh, the blacks are on welfare, the Mexicans are on welfare. I'm just saying, I'm not saying these are my personal opinions, but these are examples of how people who are racist will probably look at people who are minorities, and I'm considered a minority. For example, they say that people will use their hatred of gays or hatred of women or hatred of males or hatred of black men or whatever it is. It's a coalition organized around, example, baseball loyalties, probably cuts across class also, who are rich versus poor. And so I'm kind of mixing in reality versus the fantasy that they kind of set up a fantasy scenario, like using Red Sox against the Yankees, So both fan-based parties might disagree internally over tax policy. And an off season, when they don't have baseball to focus on, an internal civil war, so overtax policy could split both parties. So there could be wars within major groups. All Democrats don't agree. All Republicans don't agree with one another. And some people are, middle of the road when it comes to, LGBTQ people, and others are like, hell no. And then there's some people that are like, I'm cool with them as long as, or I'm cool with them altogether because I have family members that are like that, So it's like, even if you might be like Democrat, you might still have differences of opinion. You could be religious, and you might be religious and have a whole nother ideology of religion versus somebody else. They might have this old school ideology of religion. You don't always agree or see eye to eye on issues. So it can also divide within those smaller groups. And so that creates more friction, more tension, and it just makes it crazy. So it says here that the two majorities, a sweeping study of American public opinion, Brian Schaffner, William Clagett, summarized the first economic dimension as tapping arguments over appropriate distribution of economic benefits for the less fortunate, and the second, social cultural dimensional issues as about the implementation of American values and values that define appropriate social behavior, such as, think about it, appropriate social behavior. Men should be with women and women should be with men. Women shouldn't be single. They need to have a man in the house to raise the kids. There shouldn't be any LGBTQ people. There's no such thing as an alpha female. Oh, my religion is better than your religion. I don't agree with Muslims. Oh, Jews, something's wrong with the Jews. So it's like all these little fights. And so this kind of keeps the balls rolling in politics. And so the mass opinion surveys beliefs, these are just two issues, but within those two issues, you have all these other little crazy issues going on. They tend to be, at best, weakly correlated, they say, or put another way, most voters are not ideologues. Okay, so knowing most people's views on government regulations of business will tell you very little about, say, their views on abortion. Okay, they're going to vote, but there may be other things that they have or other beliefs within that vote. Okay, I'll vote for him, but I don't agree with this, but I do agree with this main point that he put out. Okay, I don't really like all of the things that Donald Trump talks about. This might be some of the views of some people. They voted for him because they have like resentment, but this and this and this. He's going to build the wall. That's the reason why I voted for him. Okay. I don't agree with Obama. Some people voted for him. They said, okay, I didn't agree with all of Obama's things. I was unsure, but he's black. Let's be honest. Some people voted for him for those reasons. And it's the same thing. Well, he's white. You know, we have only white people that we voted for a white guy. We voted him for him. There were two white people, but I didn't want a woman to be president. I wanted the man to be president. I don't care nothing about what he's gonna do. I know he's not the greatest. They're both bad, but I don't want a woman to be president, so I'm not voting for Hillary. You get what I'm saying? So I'm just using that as an example that that may be why we have these issues here. So it says that knowing most people's views on government regulation of business will tell you very little about, say, their views on abortion, except for maybe 10 to 15% of the respondents who pay very close attention to politics. Those fractions are factions of people. Like you'll have some people who are like deeply rooted, I guess you could say I'm one of them, who are deeply rooted in politics, or including those that most likely to be reading this article. I'm talking about myself. It follows that the politics organized around abortion could look very different from the politics organized around business regulation. To illustrate, consider a very simple political system with just these two issues alone. Two parties organized around the two issues as follows: Freedom Party and the Populist Party. Freedom Party, a pro-choice, anti-regulation party, and the Populist Party, pro-life and pro-regulation party. So, you know, people are like, there's some people that are pro-abortion, and then there's some people that are pro-choice. You know, they feel like women should have the right to choose what happens to their body. And then there's some people that say, no, we're for the baby, you know. And so imagine also the 60% of voters that are pro-choice and 60% of pro-regulation. So in such an environment, the Freedom Party wants voters to make abortion #1 voting issue. So what's going to be on the ballot? They tell you, they kind of prompt you, they get you prepared. Oh, you know, we're going to have we're going to have the issues around guns on the ballot. Are we going to have the issues around whatever the big hot button homelessness, you know, that came up. And so here's the other thing. This stirred up a lot of people. This is what I was talking about. Okay, when people see this, you know, these people who are like really like xenophobic, scholarly articles from the Pew Research on minorities explaining why minority births now outnumber whites. You know, when they don't even have to read the rest of the article, it just pisses them off when they see this. And so they're like, oh no, we got to do something about this. This is a problem. And so that's why you're seeing these articles that are so hot button issues, and it's all surrounded about race. And so wealth inequality has widened along racial ethnic lines. You know what I'm saying? See, look at it, just grabs you. US school enrollment hits majority minority milestone. You see that? And so somebody who's pro-white, if they see that, that's gonna piss them the hell off. And so they gotta act. So that's why we have people who are like running for Congress who are like diehard pro-white people who they think Hitler's a hero. They're part of like, you know, there was one guy, he was actually out in Virginia, and he was there when they had the rally that was really racially motivated and heated, and it had a lot of debate, it had arguing, and some people, I believe a woman was killed, some people got injured. And so he actually was one of the supporters of the alt-right or Nazi group. And he ran for a position in the seat, and he got elected because he didn't have anybody running against him either. And so, you know, it's not that, you know, just that factor in and of itself, but the fact that they're so emboldened now. And so you see these articles have changed. Used to be people wouldn't come out and say things in articles like they do now. Now it just comes and flies out of their mouth, or they put it on camera, or they're emboldened. They'll shoot people in broad daylight, and then they justify why they shot them. And, you know, at the end of the investigation, they find out that there was no justification. Just, you can always point it back to this topic here, the topic surrounding race. And so this is, I'm just kind of pulling it up. It's basically, look at this, how they get people all fired up and rallied together, and how race and identity became the central dividing line in American politics. And so I wanted you to take a look at this here. So you know that I'm not just making this up. Okay, so I know not very many people, some people are they're cool with Obama and some people weren't, but clearly you can see a difference. Here you're looking at two photos, and the first photo is Obama's internship. And so I'm gonna kind of blow it up so you can see what his internship picture photo. See all the different people, the different backgrounds, different walks of life, the different people of different races, different groups. So without any clues, can you guess which picture of interns is the Obama internship in the White House and which one is Trump's? So we're going to pan down to Trump's photos of his interns. Take a look at the difference in the photos. The top one is Obama's internship. We see people of different nationalities, and Obama in the middle, in the head center, and there's Trump. And you see all of his interns. And so, you know, it's not as colorful as on the top, right? So that should kind of give you a clue. You know, it's a little bit different. Although you see like maybe a few people who might be from another culture, but not very many. And so here, it's a whole nother different view on things. So that kind of gives you a clue as to what is kind of going on. If you don't know, like they say, if you don't know, now you know. And so that kind of gives you somewhat of a clue. Um, I feel like a lot of this has kind of been surrounded, this whole thing. The reason why you had people fighting over resources, fighting over, you know, who's going to get what, who's going to be, you know, looked at as important, you know, even minority groups fighting over little dumb stuff like, oh, I'm going to be the ignorance that's out there. It's because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment. That's the reason why some people voted for who they voted for, is because of racial resentment. Some people just simply did not like Obama, not because of any political things that he did. They don't have any real facts to really say, oh, he did this and this and this. Some people have said, oh, he deported people too, you know, there's a lot of things that he did try to do, like this DACA that everybody's fighting so hard to keep. He put that in place. He set that up. And so you can't dispute that. You can't say that he did not put that in place when you've got an administration who's doing everything to take that away, and they have. And so that kind of basically tells you what's going on. Some people did not like the fact that Obama ran a whole 8-year term, 2 terms. And so they didn't like that he happened to be Black, or the picture of what they resent, what people who are racist or xenophobic or whatever, what they don't represent or what they don't want to look at. It's like a representation that, oh, our America is being threatened because now we have a Black person in the White House. And I did hear this. I don't know how true it is. It maybe somebody can correct me about this if they know anything about this, but I heard that Trump has paid a lot of money to have a lot of security, and he has like put a lot of money forth for security. You don't have to wonder why, of course, but when Obama was in office, he didn't have as much security, is what I've heard. He didn't have as much security, and people were walking in, or there was a lot of, you know, issues around threats. There was a lot of death threats and a lot of ridicule and a lot of, you know, making fun of his wife, calling her, you know, racial slurs, calling Obama racial slurs, the family. And so these are the things that, you know, it just really, everything has been extremely racialized. So it goes on to say that the median voter thereon, however, has 2 main conceptual flaws. First, it assumes that political ideology is one-dimensional, which would create a meaningful middle on which to converge. But again, public opinion is two-dimensional, at least. So second, perhaps a more problematic is the median voter theorem assumes political leaders can just move around this one-dimensional issue space at will to respond to voters. And so do you see how this is sounding? It's like all centered around parties, all centered around who's going to vote for whom, whose issues are more dominant than the other. And so all these things, you best believe they're going to be on the ballot. And so it leads up to that. And the more hot button, the more higher magnified and polarized an issue is, the political issues are, then that's what happens. And so here's Sarah Huckabee on the right on immigration, family separation. And so she's saying under there that it is very biblical to enforce the law. And so this doesn't sit well with a lot of people, and I'm hearing that a lot of Southern or a lot of Baptist people, Baptist leaders have pretty much turned away from those comments, that they're not receiving it as positive. It's a very negative thing, and they're putting religion in this. They're dragging the religious people in it. And so it makes it worse and worse and worse. And so they've got to have all this in here. So you know that on the ballot, they're going to have the issues surrounding, probably it's going to come up again about marriage equality laws. And, who should be allowed to, make things or service people who are in the gay community. And then you had the politician who were stating that he didn't think that, if we can approve, if they could go to court and fight for not having to service people in the gay community, then they should go back to Jim Crow. So I don't know if anybody had saw that. They also have put in things in there about using the same scriptures in the Bible that they used to justify slavery or enslaved Africans, using it as also talking points towards the Latin community. That's why I said that there's no reason why Latin community and Black community should be fighting one another when we're really intertwined. You have Black Hispanics as well. We consider them a part of our community as well, even if they're from another country or continent. They might be from a different culture, but at the end of the day, they're a part of our makeup. So, and we actually also consider people from Latin community a part of our makeup, because you have a lot of Black people who have Hispanic family members. And so, but a lot of people have been fighting for little resources. And so it's created social divides within our groups. And so I believe a lot of this has been motivated. A lot of this has been instigated through politics. And so I just wanted to put that out there. If anybody realizes where I'm coming from with this, I believe this is why the fights happen like this, why you see people at odds with each other. They're angry with each other over these issues. And so you see here, this is Hillary, and this is they're actresses. They have to stress their political points of views and what they feel about them and what they're going to do and their position on them, and they have to rally in all of the voters. And so it says both these parties are stuck with certain positions. Their joint challenge is to use their resource to make politics about the issue on which they have the majority, while obscuring the issues on which they are in the minority. You see what I'm saying? So this was here before Donald Trump got elected. And so though this is a simplified example, it comes far closer to how political parties actually operate than the median voter theorem. So it offers the same reason why neither Democrats nor Republicans have converged on the middle in decades. So because they have activist groups with non-majoritarian policy goals. So parties generally win when they can divide politics in a way that makes the public happy. You see what I'm saying? Because the party is on the more popular side. So who's more popular? I'm voting for the man because I don't want a woman to be a president. I'm voting for Donald Trump because he can build a wall. No, I'm voting for Hillary because she's going to possibly be the first woman to be elected. And we haven't had a woman president. We've had a black president. We had men presidents. We've had a Democratic president. We need another Republican president. No, we don't need a woman. We don't need another Democrat. We need a Republican president so we can get our views heard. You see what I'm saying? And so it goes on to say that parties generally lose when they are forced to choose between public opinion and their activist groups because the central dividing line of politics forces them to do one or the other. This point about the importance of activists I get from Gary Miller, Norman Schofield's Thinking on Realignment. To summarize briefly, politics is about shifting the line in conflicts. So coalition, the majorities are both made and unmade depending on the line of conflict. Losers are always trying to shift the line of conflict. Winners are always trying to maintain the line of conflict. Get it? So you gotta vote for Trump because he stirs the pot. And we need somebody that's gonna, just like reality shows. You notice reality shows aren't fun unless people are fighting. Nobody wants to see a reality show and everybody gets along. Everybody's shaking hands, everybody's praying, everybody's kissing each other, they're getting along, they're hugging, they're saying how sorry they are. No, you gotta have hair pulling, eye gouging, people bickering about who married who slept with who. It makes for more ratings. So what do you think politics are like? And you notice that most times they vote for people who have some type of show business experience. It's been like that lately. Charismatic. They got a gift for gab. You know, most times they look good in the camera. They have talking points, and the more eccentric, the more gut-wrenching politics that they bring out to get people fighting, the more chance they have sometimes at getting elected, unbeknownst to some opinion that they feel like, I'm going to vote for the one I think is going to make things calm and peaceful. And that's not going to happen. They got to find somebody who's going to stir up something about them. What was it about Obama? Just be black. That stirs the pot enough. What is it about Donald Trump? Oh, you can just list a whole bunch of things. He's white. His talking points seem like everything is centered around people that are wealthy. He says he's a businessman. He's running the government like a business. He's going to build his wall. He's talking about the deal. He had a book. He's charismatic. He says things. He talks about women a certain way. He's had some scandals. Oh, wow. Yeah. So, what do you just look at it, So to summarize briefly, politics is about shifting the line of conflict. And so it says how civil rights realigned American politics slowly. With the basic bit of theory in place, we are now better poised to tackle the history of how we got to 2016. Our story effectively begins in 1932 when Democrats formed a majority coalition that included Northern liberals and Southern conservatives. So that was their talking points back then. The Northern liberals and the Southern conservatives. The Great Depression had made economics the fundamental dividing line of conflict. So you got to have some heated issues to bring about that whole, I'm voting for him or I'm voting for this person because this, and this. And so the Republican president, Herbert Hoover, getting the blame for the collapse, Democrats were on the winning side of the issue. Now, in the median voter theorem, explained that the world Republicans would have simply become the party of the New Deal as well. So, as some would say, Eisenhower attempted to do, but Eisenhower's New Deal, light republicanism, angered the activists and economic elites in the Republican Party who still wanted to undo the New Deal. and who were sure that if they really truly opposed the New Deal, public opinion would miraculously move to their side. So they did this way back. What is the year? 1932. Here we are in 2018. It hasn't really changed. It's just you got new hot button topics. Well, some of them are the same ones. Notice it just never, just it's gotten more pronounced. And so when the far right economic conservatives, Goldwater, lost 1964, however, it became clear Republicans couldn't win purely on limited government as a defense of liberty. So they would have to attach limited government in the winning position on some other issues that would split the Democratic Party. So, like all majorities, the Democratic Party in 1932 and 1964 contained within the seeds of its own destruction. So, in particular, internal conflict between Northern liberals and Southern conservatives over the issue of civil rights. That was big back then. What's big now? We can just women's issues, Me Too, LGBTQ, gun violence. Now we got to bring up the issues of suicide, opioid crisis, just going down the line. So it says that Northern liberals became the majority faction within the Democratic Party and exerted pressure, and the Democrats passed a series of civil rights bills into law. And so what's happening now? There are a lot of laws. Seems like Donald Trump, he's not wasting his time signing bills, laws, things. He's making quick changes. And a lot of it, he's unraveling and undoing all the things that Obama set up. And that also includes DACA, where he closed that off. And you see who it's appeasing to. You see who it's appeasing to. And so with that, the Democrats effectively lost their winning political hand for the sake of the moral principle. So the civil rights laws created the backlash of Southern white Democratic conservatives, which now what do we have? The backlash of people who were angered because we had a Black president who was voted in, and it was called, we're going to make change. Yes, we can, to no, we don't want this. There's no change. You're destroying America. You're a threat to America because there's a Black president. He was elected for 2 terms, which was a total of 8 years. That's the whole thing that a president can do. And so he's destroyed everything. We got to take our country back, make America great again. Really, what is that saying? Make America white again? That might be a safer thing to say, right? But it's safer, really, to say, make America great again. So who is that appeasing to? Okay, so, and with that, the Democrats effectively lost their winning. So back here, it says that they lost their winning political hand for the sake of moral principles. So it was about civil rights back then. Southern white Democratic conservatives. So it was different. Democrats who were conservatives, and they were Southern and they were white back then. And so the Northern working class whites who were most directly affected by urban riots and housing and school desegregation. So this gave Republicans the cross-cutting issue with a clear majority they needed. So race and identity, with Nixon's strategic guidance, Republicans went to full stream ahead in making it the central dividing line in American politics. And so that I'm just going to stop there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I was just trying to bring out a point that this is nothing short of what we're going through today. And so that's the reason why, I think it's really silly when people don't read. It's like a lot of this stuff is political. That's where it's coming from. And to keep people fighting over, little resource, I look more whiter, or I look lighter skin, even with Black culture, Black people within themselves. Well, I'm lighter skin, I'm darker skin, or I look better, or I have more money than you, stuff like that. So that's kind of giving you an example, you understand? And so to keep people fighting at the bottom over these little hot button issues is like, we know that's what they go to the polls with. Oh, I hate the fact that I'm just so distraught. Look what they did. They're killing people. They're causing depression. you know, they're letting these people get these guns, and you know, and then they make more laws, more, you know, they put more money into where they think they it best fits. And then they'll turn around. It's Isn't it ironic that they'll say, we don't have money for this, but they have billions of dollars for this other project. There is money, but it's money to be spent on the things that they feel that is most important. And so we're going to cut Social Security, we're going to cut welfare, we're going to cut all these little programs for the poor because we got to make our wall. We're going to cut this program. We're not going to do, you know, anything. We're not going to worry about students having all this loan debt, you know, because, you know, that's not our really big focus right now. Our focus is building walls, you know, and securing our borders, and, you know, um, buying military weapons, and, you know, stockpiling, and, you know, funding what could be possibly another war, you know, things like that. And so, do you see what I'm saying? So a lot of this stuff all points to where it originates is political craziness. And it starts from the top up, and it trickles all the way down to people like us that live in these countries that have to be subject of all this craziness. So here you see a picture here on the right of a guy holding his son. It says the Trump administration separation of families at the border is explained. And so they have an explanation for why they're doing this. What is the explanation? We heard what they use the Bible and some other things. And then I kind of did a video about the place where they were keeping some of the kids, and what there was two sides to each story. One side was saying that the conditions were like where they were being held in a cage, and they were saying, oh, they're not held in cages. But as the picture showed that I had on the video prior, you did see fencing and cage. Then I said, playing devil's advocate, what their argument could be, they might even go so far as, if they stoop to using the Bible, they might even go so far as to say, well, you know, we don't know who all the people are, and we're trying to protect the kids from the criminals. You know, I could see them doing that because that's what their premise has usually been. But a lot of this, it says, and yes, it says it's easy to answer that. It says, and yes, racial resentment does more to explain the support for Donald Trump and than even the ideology. So a lot of racial resentment. So this is why we're getting all of this, why you're getting all of this, and why people are feeling the way they are feeling. So it's not something that is imagined that you're like, what the hell is going on? Why is it always about race? That's why, because you got to build populist parties so you can build, you know, different groups, cliques together. So eventually those people will turn out to vote for who they feel best fits in their agendas of what they feel is most important. Is it LGBT issues? Is it transgender issues? Is it women's issues? Is it pro-abortion or pro-choice, pro-life? Is it Black issues of police brutality and racial profiling? Is it also racially profiling minorities as a whole? Is it issues surrounding by the you know, people who earn less and they're minimum wage workers, and they're not really being paid, you know, the cost of living, how it has increased, you know, different things like that. So all these issues come to a boiling point, come to a head. And so some people feel that they're going to get their needs met at the polls, while others feel like it, no matter who they vote for, their votes don't count, or their votes, all of their needs are never really met. And so it's an ongoing battle. But to keep people intrigued, to keep people up in the air, and keep people feisty about all these hot button topics, you got to create these platforms. So even to where it affects people to the point to where you constantly have it in the news. You also constantly have it, where it's pronounced even in your neighborhoods. Like, for example, my mom was telling me that, now this really happened, that a lady had called a tow truck. And so the tow truck came. Now she had on her tow truck at the time, the person in the tow truck came, and this lady who was pulled over on the side of the road, she had on her bumper sticker was saying Bernie Sanders. This was when Bernie Sanders was going to run for president. This is before they came down to just Hillary and Trump. And he saw that sticker, the tow truck person saw the sticker, and he refused to tow her car to an auto body shop because of that bumper sticker. So that's how effective these arguments are. If people really are really persistently and consistently and adamantly and deeply rooted in these hot button topics and issues, it can affect the quality of living even in your communities. And so that's where you see, like, if there's a high level of crime or violence that results from whatever the issues are, it's a result of all of this because of how people feel. Even the people that think they are not important, oh, they don't listen to us, so we got to go out here and we got to scramble, we got to hustle and get this money. Because, even if they feel like they've given up, they feel motivated by something. Oh, money is what motivates me, because the way the world operates is that having wealth and having a lot of money is what makes the world go around. You hear people protesting that the minimum wage jobs is not enough. You can't pay your bills and rent, and you're not able to live on that. So what does that prompt some people out of desperation to do? Well, that's not my issue. I'm just going to hustle. I'm going to do stuff criminal. That's the way they think. Are people that think like that. That's the way they think. They think money is the issue. So I'm going to go out and do things by any means necessary to achieve that American dream, even if it means losing my life or going to prison. And that's the way some people's minds think. I know I don't think like that, but some people out there think like that. They think that they will risk their life. And so, well, we got to eat. You heard people, well, we got to eat, and in order to eat, you have to hustle. You have to do this. You have to sell drugs. Somebody's going to die. We're going to all die anyway, and so some people's mentality is like that. And so they would rather, if they have low skills or they feel like it takes too long to go 4 years of college, that's the way some people view it. A 6-month program, oh, I can't wait that long, I got to hustle. And so some people think like that because they feel desperate. And some of that, is understandable, but it's at what cost? And so they say, well, you see the movie stars, they do stuff at what cost? Go under the knife. They're doing all these things, to their bodies to alter their look so they can appear in certain shows and movies. Some people will lose weight, gain weight, change things about themselves, and it's all to stay on top of their craft. And so some people look at it like that. And so all of this is all centered around these hot button issues, these topics, which is now starting to shift now, where it's not only seeing race being a key factor, but money, wealth versus the unwealth, or the poverty, people who are poor. And so a lot of these neighborhoods or cities have been gentrified. A lot of the rents are not even rents. They want people who make 6 figures or more. That also is making the numbers of the middle class dwindle or almost disappear, where it's just becoming rich versus poor, or poor versus rich, or rich versus poor. And so that is where a lot of these fights are coming. So you had teachers coming out from schools saying that they're not making enough money. They had to take up 2 or 3 different jobs just to make ends meet, just to make the mortgage, or just to be able to feed their families. Some of them had to, do double shifts of something. And so this is what the world has come to. And so all of this results in all of these dividing lines. And also, we always see, almost always, race plays a part in identity in all of these dividing line in these American politics. And it's really an evil game, is what I would call it. But with that being said, I just thought I would put that out there because I feel like a lot of this is where it comes from. Like when you see somebody and you think, oh well, so and so's doing better than me. They may not be, or they may, and they don't know why. Why is it that I'm able to achieve this and this other person, has done the same thing and they're not able to achieve it, and they may come to the conclusion, some people say, well, I earned it, I worked for it. And then another person may look at it in a whole nother way. No, I was very fortunate, or I was white. I was white. I did earn, but there were some things I didn't know, but I was able to get it versus this person that was black or this person of color or whatever. And so some people will admittedly tell you that I think there's something that is unfair about this, you know, like even getting hired on jobs, places of occupation, or to work, to find work, that they would choose someone else of a different background, different race, nationality, or whatever you would want to call it, because that party is favored more, is the most popular, or or they're, looked at as, stereotypically, oh, they're the workers, you guys are the lazy ones, you know, stuff like that. And so now I also seen that there's a lawsuit for Harvard because now Asians are being targeted in a way where it's saying that Harvard ranks Asian Americans lower on the personality traits. So where is this coming from? And so I thought I would bring this up as well because you see how it plays on race. Um, and so Harvard did not directly counter the personal rating statistics, but said that in a Friday filing that the challengers' data analysis failed to include applicants such as athletes and the children of parents who attended Harvard or of staff at the school. So Harvard also submitted an expert report that said that the challengers' personal ratings model did not sufficiently control for such factors as the personal essay teacher's recommendations. And so the country's oldest institution of higher learning or higher education broadly defended its longstanding effort for racial diversity as part of the education mission. So it denies that it unlawfully sets quotas, which I don't believe that's true. I believe they do set quotas, or engages in racial balancing. And so admission officers undertake the whole person evaluation. And so they're basically defending themselves, Harvard is, because of the allegations and lawsuit that they're pretty much using Asians, and they're kind of like listing them as on the lower end in terms of personality traits, was just a play on race again and on words. So Joanne Biskupic, CNN legal analyst, Supreme Court biographer, and so a group claiming. So I also heard some stuff about USC, and some things there. So it has Harvard that will not admit. The Students for Fair Admission said that race is not only an important factor, it is a dominant consideration in admitting Hispanics and African Americans and Asian American applicants with 25% chance of admission, for example, would have 35% if he were white and 75% if he were Hispanic, 95% chance if he were African American. So Harvard counters that statistical analysis on which the challengers rely are flawed in multiple ways, and say that the percentage of Asian American students has gone up over the past decade. So Asian American students now make up nearly 23% of the admitted students at Harvard, and African Americans 15%, Latinos 12.2%. A category of all others, mainly white students, is 50%, as usual. It's always usually that school has been known to be like more like white. Harvard did not directly counter the personal rating statistic, but said in Friday filing that the challengers' data analysis failed to include applicants such as, like I said, athletes, children of parents who attended Harvard, or staff at the school. Harvard also submitted an expert report that said that the challenger's personal ratings model did not sufficiently control for such factors as the personal essay teacher's recommendation. So it's the country's oldest institution of higher learning and broadly defended the longstanding effort of racial diversity as part of the education mission. So it denies that unwillingly sets quotas or engages in racial balancing, which some of these colleges, they kind of have quotas. Some of them will work. Some of it that can be a good thing, but some of it can be a bad thing too. Especially if people are being targeted and it's in a negative way, or it's just to fill a quota. Oh, we don't have enough black students. Put a couple of black kids in there. Sort of like the Donald Trump picture of his interns. Intern. Well, we don't have any black people, so let's get one black intern. So, I'm just using that to kind of make the example. So Friday filing offered the fullest picture to date that the kinds of assertions and evidence to present in the case that began in 2014 ultimately could affect admissions policies of racial affirmative action nationwide. So all of this could also be a thing that could be brought up again as another hot button topic. Then it would have to also bring up the issues of student loan debt. So the challenger's goal is reversal in 1978 Supreme Court landmark decision that allowed racial affirmative action. So this is coming into play again. So it's going back to this. It says both sides filed a motion in summary judgment on Friday, even though U.S. District Court Judge Allison Burroughs has signaled that she would not rule without a trial, and she has set an October trial date. Harvard today engages in the same kind of discrimination and stereotyping that it used to justify quotas on Jewish applicants in the 1920s and the 1930s. So challengers assert, adding that Harvard admitted students based on only their academic index, Asian Americans would comprise 50% of the admitted class. Harvard, which draws 40,000 applicants each year, 1,600 college spots, scores students on a scale of 1 to 6, and 1 being the best. So the 5 basic categories: academic, extracurricular, athletic, personal, and overall. So the school says that the overwhelming number of applicants have superior academic credentials, and the other categories can take on greater weight. So for the class of 2019, the example, 8,000 had perfect grade point averages, 3,500 had perfect SAT math scores, 2,700 had perfect SAT verbal scores. And so university lawyers opened their argument on Friday by suggesting that the real motive of the challengers is not to protect the interests of Asian Americans, but rather represent the latest salvo of ideological opponents of consideration of race in the university admissions. So the case of Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard was initiated by Edward Blum, a conservative advocate who has long fought affirmative action that gives Blacks and Hispanics a boost. See that? So they're bringing this whole issue into it again. In previous lawsuits, such as against the University of Texas, Blum enlisted white students as plaintiffs. This is the first effort using African Americans. That's the first major case against a private university. And so USC is a private university, Harvard's a private university. You can look them up to see which ones are private. And so the federal civil rights law bars discrimination based on race. But when the Supreme Court first upheld affirmative action in the case 40 years ago, it said that race could be one factor among many in deciding who gets a place to bolster the campus diversity, but it forbade quotas. So Students for Fair Admission asserted on Friday that Harvard conducted an internal investigation in 2013 that found that its admission systems was biased against Asian Americans, but that it then killed the investigation and buried the reports. So Harvard responded that the analysis was incomplete and never reached any conclusion about discrimination. So it's bringing these issues all up again. And what is it centering around? Race. And so this is America, and this is what everything has been about. for many, many years. It's even dating back to all those years ago, and it's still the same fights. It's just new people now involved in it. And with that being said, this is the original article. The first one was out of the Vox, and the next one was out of CNN article, of course. But it really brings it. It's just a mild version. There are some deeper discussions that people can, come out with, but a lot of this is all centered around. It's like a pony show, and so to keep people. My point is to keep people fighting over these issues is where they're going to run into is who we're going to vote for. Everybody's got this in their head. Okay, do you remember what happened at the school? They're discriminating this person, blah, 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 blah. So to keep people fighting, see this, stronger together. Particularly, you notice in this photo here, you see it's a lot of African American women. And so whoever this group was for, that was their core platform is African American women. And so she had to say things, a stronger economy. You notice that? Because money is always an issue in the Black community, not having resources or having a lack of thereof, or having what you call issues with the inequalities, wealth gap. There's a racial wealth gap. And so they have to keep that going. And so these were the two major parties. You have your red states, your blue states, your Dems, and your Republicans. And so now what are the hot button issues? You could just list them all. And if you really just think about them all. And those are the things that people are going to go to the polls with if they're allowed to vote, if you don't have any things and even if you don't vote, these things are in your head because you somewhere fit in the puzzle, because there's no such thing as people say, oh, I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. Yeah, there is people that say they don't, everybody has a belief in something, even if they say I don't believe in nothing. You're somewhere in there. Oh, those people who are atheists, or those people who don't believe in nothing, how are you gonna, what's your position on this? You're gonna speak about something, even if you say, oh, they don't give a shit about us, and that's why I don't believe in nothing. So with that being said, anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I believe a lot of the things that we're experiencing result because of all of this, because of politics. That's where it all comes from. That the fight that minorities have is actually the same fights, maybe some slightly differences on issues of what we're faced with, but leading originator here. They have to keep people fighting so they can keep people engaged. If everybody's peaceful and getting along, it's boring. We got to keep stuff happening. And then two, to justify why they make these laws and they change things so rapidly. But anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for listening.